Ding, 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 ding.
Welcome to Talking Pictures Trivia, the podcast in which a group of geographically challenged friends explore movies through trivia as an excuse to keep their friendships alive. I'm one of these friends and today's host, Nick, and with me is...
Tom.
And KJ.
Great to have you back as always. Additionally, joining us as guests for this episode are...
Nora.
And Andy.
Thanks for joining us today, Nora and Andy. Nora and Andy are friends with KJ. Nora and Andy are married. KJ, Nora, and Andy used to watch Lost together every week as the show was falling apart leading up to the finale. You may remember Andy from our Ex Machina episode. Nora also conveniently likes movies, and Andy still conveniently likes movies. For those joining us for the first time, we start off each episode with a movie quiz. Wait, I've just been informed that the regularly scheduled podcast format has been scrapped to settle a trivial feud between my fellow co-hosts and the esteemed guest duo regarding today's film. I guess we'll still do 2 rounds and see what team comes out on top. Movie rant to follow. Today's movie was suggested to us by Nick, which is me. This week, we'll be jumping into 1988 comedy romance Coming to America, directed by John Landis, who is also known for An American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Animal House, and the Michael Jackson music video Thriller. Other movies that would have been in theaters with Coming to America include Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Big, A Fish Called Wanda, and Short Circuit 2. This movie starts off on the morning of Prince Akeem from Zamunda, his birthday, and apparently that's the day where he has to get married and meet his queen. He has not met her before, and Prince Akeem is a pretty thoughtful guy, and he doesn't really like the system. He's very forward-thinking. And he somehow comes up with this plan is a little bit of a ruse from his father, just saying he wanted to see and explore the world before he got married. But his secret mission is to actually find a queen of his own. And of course, the most logical place to find a queen would be in Queens, New York City. And I think Prince Akeem said it best when he explained what he was looking for. He said, and I quote, "I want a woman that will arouse my intellect as well as my loins." A lot of fun things ensue, and in the end, I will spoil it, he does find his queen. Now, what's my familiarity with this movie? This is going back to, I'd have to say, the college days. And again, we've probably talked about this in a few other movies in the past. I used to have Comedy Central just in the background all the time. And I'm pretty sure this, along with some of my other favorite movies, mostly from the 80s, because I guess they had the rights for it at the time, were from this period of my life. And the reason I specifically brought this one up right now that it came to mind was I noticed that they're creating a sequel, which is coming out mid-December, so not far from now, called Coming to, the number 2, America. And, you know, I'm always cautious when I have a fond memory movie and then they create a sequel, especially when it's 33 years later. But we'll see how that goes. I always liked this movie. I thought it was a nice mix of a comedy that actually had a good plot and some positive messages. It seems to be a theme where I don't always, sometimes I like slapstick kind of humor, but I do like a lot of these movies. There was actually a tangible plot aside from funny instances and great dialogue. I also realized that this was another one of those films that I have only seen the edited for TV version. I didn't realize how many movies that I really enjoy that I've actually never seen the original cut. And this goes back to a period where Eddie Murphy was on fire in the 80s. Another movie he had that I really liked was Trading Places from 1983. And in fact, there's a reference to that movie within this movie where Prince Akeem gives money to 2 homeless men, which were Randolph and Mortimer Duke, from that other prior film. And in fact, the listening audience may not know, but when we were doing our alpha season, Trading Places was one of the movies that we tested out this format with. And who knows, maybe one day we'll dust that one off for our listening audience. Another random note before I turn it over to Tom for his initial thoughts. I just thought it was important to bring up that my wife watches Housewives, all the housewife shows. And there was a Beverly Hills one where this one lady named Garcelle was on in this last season. And she kept bringing up her role in Coming to America and how busy her schedule was filming the sequel. And of course, I couldn't remember her at all. So it turns out she was one of the Rose Bearers. She was like the first one that wishes him good morning in the opener. I mean, technically it's a speaking role, and she was listed third in the cast list, but that was just because it was in order of appearance. So I can't imagine what her role would be 33 years later in this sequel. She must, I'm hoping, portray a completely different character, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. On that note, I'm going to turn it over to Tom. What are your initial thoughts?
This is my first time seeing this movie, and I'm not particularly fond of it, I have to say. What I do like, though, is Eddie Murphy. And Eddie Murphy playing a prince seems pretty appropriate. In this film, he carries himself with this regal mien that is incredibly attractive and charismatic. And it's great to watch him sort of coast through this world that he's able to occupy, both Zamunda and then later Jackson Street in Queens. And that's really what I like about this. And Arsenio Hall, very young, has these huge eyes and this smile that, like, most of it is his gums. And it's another incredibly attractive, incredibly charismatic, incredibly young performance coming out of these actors. Or James Earl Jones, who has this huge smile and this great like lion's pelt he wears that looks natural strapped to his body. That's what I liked about this. I mean, I find that the direction actually to be kind of bad, a little bit lazy. The plot too. I mean, these characters for the most part don't develop at all. They don't use a traditional romantic comedy structure where he has to come to her and she has to come to him and they meet in the middle. Eddie Murphy is sort of, or Prince Akeem is sort of enters this world well made enough, and his quest really is just to seduce this woman, or to appeal to her. Seduction isn't exactly his game, to appeal to her. But other than that, we don't see a lot of character development through him. And so I'd say the reason to watch this movie is just to watch a young actor who really is at the top of his game, and it kind of shines through him. His celebrity shines through him. KJ, what are your thoughts?
I agree 100% there, Tom. Eddie Murphy was phenomenal in this movie. You couldn't look away, and you smiled and laughed every time he made a joke or was just standing there regally, like you said, Tom. Similar to Nick, I had only seen, I guess it was Comedy Central. That sounds right. The Comedy Central version, and I don't think I'd ever seen the beginning. It was pretty interesting. I didn't realize how much of it took place in Zamunda towards the beginning there. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. How about you, Nora?
I've seen this movie about 1 billion times. I think a healthy dose of the edited for television version. So I definitely, it loses a little color in that version, but a lot of the real one as well. And I agree. It's just like Eddie Murphy, top of his game, so incredibly quotable, and everybody in it just looks like they're having a blast. Like they all, like the big smiles, and it's like, it's just like they all look like they're enjoying themselves. It's super quotable. I feel like I say a lot of things from this movie all the time. And as we were watching it with Andy, I realized there are even things that my brother says now that I forgot were from this movie. Like they just become things that he says or does that now I remembered were from this movie. And I love how much Eddie Murphy looks at the camera and like breaks the fourth wall. It's like a signature thing that it's like one of my favorites. He just gives this look at the camera, like, seriously, that is awesome. And so I love this movie. But I do admit that it's more of like I love it like I like Doritos or mac and cheese. It's not exactly like a cinematic masterpiece. It's just more like comfort food that makes me feel happy. Andy, what are your thoughts?
I don't know when I saw this the first time, but it's one of those great kind of Saturday afternoon movies, Sunday afternoon. You guys mentioned Comedy Central. I'm thinking TBS, but you didn't get the full version there. I do enjoy the unedited, or maybe it was rated R originally. I don't know. I'm impressed how big of a budget it seems to have had, because there's a lot. There's big set pieces. There's a lot of cast, giant dance numbers. I mean, they went all out on making a big comedy, and I think they did a great job. It's right. It's like eating cheese curls, basically. Right. You're not in it for the character development, but I laughed a lot watching it again this time, and I definitely enjoyed how knowing, the whole cast knows what they're doing and knows how ridiculous it is and how great it is at the same time. So I'm a big fan for just the sheer entertainment value, and Eddie Murphy and Eric LaSalle had a great role. I mean, Arsenio Hall is classic in it, and I'm sure we'll get there, but all the different characters played by, the same people, it's classic.
Now, of course, before we continue, we always have to ask the guests, what would be your recommended snack to enjoy while watching this specific film? And I present that to both of you.
So honey mustard pretzel bits, I think you should eat. Brought to you by Snyder's Lance.
Well, obviously, I need to be having a milkshake from McDowell's.
Oh, definitely. Wait, was it strawberry? The same favorite,
yeah.
favorite of Daryl?
It's time for Trivial Feud.
Okay, I got to lay down some ground rules for our Trivial Feud, okay? Here's the following rules. The starting team will continue to provide answers to each question until all acceptable answers are shared or they get 2 guesses wrong. If a team gets 2 guesses wrong on a question, the other team can steal the points by providing only 1 correct answer from the remaining options. If that stealing team guesses wrong, the starting team wins the points. The winner of each question will receive 1 point for each correct answer uncovered by either team. Andy and Nora, as the guest team, you can choose whether to start in round 1 or let the co-host team start and try to steal their points. The reverse will happen in round 2. What do you want to do?
Let's start.
Okay. The categories to choose from are, that's easy. If there's one thing Queen's got a lot of, it's common parts. When you think of garbage, think of Akeem. And my son works.
When you think of garbage, think of Akeem.
It's time for question 1.
How many ways did Akeem try to get Lisa interested in him? And the way this will work is we're going to, each person, one of you will start, and we'll go back and forth, and you continue until all the answers are selected. And I will tell you there are 6 potential answers here, or you get 2 guesses wrong. So Nora, if you'd like to start.
He bought her the earrings that were not from Daryl.
Not from Daryl. From a secret admirer, not Daryl.
Yes.
Which is awesome. By the way, it turns out those were $500,000 earrings.
Nice.
So yeah, that is one.
There's no way that could be true. There's no look at those freaking things. There's no way those are $500,000
in the movie,
earrings.
not in the appraisal.
Hmm.
But in the context of the movie, they were supposed to be $500,000.
Tom, are you saying that's low or high? There's some big rocks.
Oh, that's
man.
way
I think
too
he's
high.
thinking that's in the
that's
costume jewelry department.
Yeah, I think that's maybe like 10 times what that. Yeah.
I
Okay,
think
Andy.
we're supposed to suspend our disbelief and believe that the gems are,
Yes.
real gemstones.
Tasteful. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Andy.
He has a very awkward conversation with her, introducing himself while mopping her floor.
Yes. Yes, he does. He tries. I'm going to put that under gets the job at McDowell's. So it's all
Okay, yeah.
part of getting to get closer to her. So gets the job at McDowell's. Nora.
He puts the giant wad of cash in the donation basket at the Black Awareness Rally.
I'm actually going to give you a wrong on that one because she never knew
She didn't know it was him.
that it was him.
What about the earrings then?
So 1X. She does find
Ooh.
out later about the earrings. I'm
Oh.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure she finds out about the earrings.
Well, yeah, she
Well,
she takes them off in the train. I always
Yes.
feel like
yes.
they're also clip-ons, apparently,
Yes,
based on the way that she
yes.
takes them off, and I feel like that's an odd thing.
She does know that
That's
the
your
earrings.
$500,000 comment.
That explains the price.
No, the $1 million ones are
Million,
clip-ons.
yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
forever, whatever.
But yes, unfortunately, we're going to go one wrong on that one because she never knew. She never found that out.
So it's going to be like that, Nick, huh?
It is, unfortunately.
All right.
There are still 4 remaining options.
Andy, I'm
Andy.
sorry.
Or, well, he takes her on a wonderful date to an art museum that happens to have Zumundian artifacts.
Yes, that's the whole part. And I'm going to count that whole sequence of the date to the trying to make her a meal. So that didn't work out. So they went to dinner and dancing. That whole sequence of date, we will count in that category. And that is a funny scene when his family is on the wall there. And he thought he was just having some public displays of affection.
Right.
Nora, 3 remaining on the board.
Stopping the robbery by Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, Samuel L. Jackson playing Samuel L. Jackson
Yes.
in many films. Yes, he's got some crazy skills from all his training. Andy, we have 2 more. One quizzer was quizzed and he came up with 6 total answers.
He gets a haircut because he thinks it would look more, I think, like contemporary with the American people.
I'm going to give that a wrong just because we don't have a strong correlation. Yes, that is not what the esteemed quizzer had previously denoted as the top 6 ways.
This is like, what does Nick think is what we're playing.
What does Nick think?
One quizzer.
Whatever conversation you have with Nick is called What's Nick Thinking?
That's actually the name of this podcast.
Wait, Tom, you may have wanted to choose that at a different time when you're trying to steal the points. So KJ and I guess Tom, you can talk amongst yourselves here because the question is over after this, but there are 2 potential ways that Akeem tried to get Lisa interested in him.
So Tom, I have one idea, but my ideas, they're usually not correct. So if you have an idea.
Well,
yeah, we can talk,
yes,
right?
to each
because
other?
the question's over after.
Oh, okay. So what's the idea?
The barber tells him the way to get in with a woman is to get in good with her father. So he tries to impress the father.
Yeah, he does go up to the father and is like, have you seen the basketball game? It was very good, or the football game. He tries to have a conversation about the football game. Yeah. Okay.
But did you have any other ideas?
Say it. I did. My other idea was he goes on a date with her to the St. John's game, or he goes on a date with her sister to be with her at the St. John's.
That's risky because I don't know how much agency he had in that. So what does Nick think that Akeem thinks?
Well, he does exhibit agency in talking to the father, right?
Yep.
He does deliberately do that. I would say he deliberately goes on a date with the sister in order to get closer to her. But let's go with. I have another one. Quote Nietzsche. I think he does that too to impress her. At one time in the restaurant, he's mopping, and then he quotes about like a man has to walk before he can run. But let's do what you said.
You sure?
So I think he's doing that to impress her, right? Because he has to get in with the dad.
All right, so Nick, we're gonna go with what the barber recommended, in that impress the father to win the daughter.
Are you locked in?
We are locked in.
Tries to build rapport with the father is on the board. So you will receive 5 points for this one.
5 points. I've never gotten 5 points before.
5 points on the board. The other one, which actually, Tom, you might have got right with the Nietzsche. It was a little broader. We had charm/intellect. So he used his charm/intellect to try to get her interested in him. That's the only one that I didn't bring up here. I thought this would be a fun one to talk about Akeem. Prince Akeem is a very interesting character. He seems to have at his disposal what many would actually think they would dream of. Servants and everything is done for him, but he does not seem to embrace that as one would think he would. What are your thoughts on the primary character? And you can also talk about Eddie Murphy's portrayal of Prince Akeem.
Well, it's both the joy of the movie and the weakness of the movie is the fact that Prince Akeem is a person who at age 21 and at the first shot of the film realizes that he wants to sort of go into the wilderness, so to speak, to live a real life in order to find someone who can separate him from his position. And he doesn't really, the character, whatever, emotionally, in terms of his maturity, doesn't go anywhere from there, right? He's kind of made the discovery that he needs to make. And Eddie Murphy is, despite the fact that Eddie Murphy is maybe known for playing lower born characters, yeah, Eddie Murphy, the joy of the movie, I think, is that Eddie Murphy is able to, is sort of able to be the center of every room he's in this film. And it's his celebrity which sort of has this regal air to it, and by this point he is not only this incredible comic and actor, but he's established himself, and all of that energy is sort of centered in this guy. However, I'm not entirely sure what discovery Akeem the character makes that would be kind of familiar in a romantic comedy mold.
As I had mentioned before, I hadn't seen the beginning of this film, and so as I was watching it, at first I'm like, "Oh, is this a Sid Arthur tale?" And it's not, but it starts with the rich guy saying, "Oh, I want to see what it's really like," um, but he doesn't really learn anything when he's out there. He sticks to his morals, and his morals are already good, and it's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, it's typically he starts where this, typically people would end, right? Typically, you would think that. I mean, it's dangerous to reinvent a movie in the way you want it to be, but you would think that the lesson learned is that how to cope with the struggles of the real world, and in so doing, have that kind of intelligence to know that your position is not you, and therefore you want somebody who's attracted to you for you, that sort of bumper sticker type moral in it. But he doesn't really have to go through that journey. He doesn't have to go through that journey emotionally. He has to go through it physically.
Well, and I think that usually in stories like this, that character would be the one who then, upon experiencing like the rat infested apartment or whatever, like the stuff, would be like very flustered by that or like unhappy with that. But they really use the character of Arsenio Hall's character Simi to be like that. So it's like they kind of, he gets out of having to be that one that's like, ew, gross, poor people, like, or being not, taken care of all the time, because he has this like foil of the whole movie that just like does that for him. So like he does, it's like they don't have, neither of them have to go anywhere, because Simi doesn't like become a good person. He's just still kind of materialistic. Like they just like stay where they are, and they're like, devil and angel kind of thing.
Meanwhile, Semi would do anything to have Prince Akeem's position.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who enjoys all the treatment of royalty, even though he is not royalty. He is just the servant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make a comparison between two movies I'm going to posit has never ever been made before.
Be careful. We do some crazy stuff on this show.
I feel like this is a little bit like Liam Neeson in Taken.
Who did not see it going there?
Because basically it's like competence porn where they just have everything and do everything. And there's no question really that they're going to be successful. You just get to watch them kind of like make their way through the world and take everybody out while doing it. Like in Taken, Liam Neeson basically has almost no trouble the entire time. He has resources. He's competent. He has like all the fighting instincts and training, whatever it is. And he's just basically a badass the whole movie.
I was going to say, he does have a specific set of skills, right?
Right? He does. And so Prince Akeem is like the royal version of that, where he's well educated. He has basically infinite money. At no time do you worry kind of for his safety. He's basically just extremely well-mannered and competent.
But also like able to navigate the other half, like the unfamiliar territory magically.
Yeah, he's unflustered, and you just get to watch him kind of like take care of things.
And it would be kind of a shame if he were. It would be a shame to watch Eddie Murphy in this role get flustered. It would be a shame for him to be anything other than princely.
Yeah.
And so I think the problem I have with the movie is also contributes to the strength of the performance, which is, well, I'd like to see these characters develop, do something new. I really don't want to see Eddie Murphy in this role degraded in any way.
Yeah, I think that's almost a different movie. And again, I think we're all agreeing this isn't necessarily a cinematic masterpiece. I lean in the camp of this is just a very enjoyable movie to watch, and Eddie Murphy is amazing. One of the things, going to that point of him not being flustered and how he presents himself, and he's always on point, there is the scene where Semi revamps the apartment, and he's with Lisa, and he doesn't want to go in because of all the changes. He's supposed to be poor. And then she says something to the effect like, "You're only not letting me in because you're embarrassed of the appearance of your apartment." And he says, "Once again, you are correct." But he was embarrassed that it looked so good, not that it was poor. So I just thought that was a pretty good understanding of how Prince Akeem operates.
Yeah. One type of movie that movie or show, plot device, that I have a particular problem with is when the main character, and especially between the love interests, there's a giant lie at the beginning, and the lie persists, and you know it's a looming, and at the end, it's going to blow up and create like one of the biggest conflicts in the movie. That typically happens, but everybody feels betrayed, frequently when the lie comes out. And this is one of those kind of movies. But I don't have as much of a problem with it in this case for two reasons. One is that for his ends, which are kind of ethical ends, he has to lie. There's no way to achieve the separation where he knows that someone loves him for who he is and not his money without the deceit to begin with. So it's unfortunate, but it's necessary in a lot of ways. But yet, and just as you said, he says, "You're right, it is the appearance." He manages to not lie very much. He just kind of doesn't, he's not very specific sometimes, but it's like he doesn't want to lie. He doesn't want to deceive as more than he has to. So I enjoy that slight variant on the big lie plot device.
The one thing is, by the end of the movie, he's still gonna marry the original wife that he didn't want to marry. I mean, he might be settling for it or something, but throughout his whole adventure and everything, by the end, until the veil is lifted, he thinks he's failed. I mean, he has failed, and he's compromising his principles of finding an intellectual. So in a lot of ways, that's the only time he wasn't flustered, but that's when he fails.
Yeah, he fails to reach his. It seems like he has failed to reach his goal,
especially from his perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, he does have this responsibility to. I keep calling it Wakanda. What is this place? What is this called again? Zamunda. Thank you.
It's not King T'Challa.
Yeah. He does have this responsibility to this culture, right? He is trapped in his way. This is the theme of movies about people of privilege, right? Who go into the real world.
Marie Antoinette, where we just explored last week.
They're trapped by their privilege, and that comes with the privilege is awarded for a responsibility. You have a responsibility to fulfill. Then in movies with people with great privilege, we see that the privilege itself is compensation for something. And very often a lot of these movies are about having to test the boundary of that the boundary of that responsibility and negotiating the boundary of that responsibility. And with kind of romantic comedies, they're maybe a little bit more conservative. They tend to lean on the side of you have to still embrace that responsibility, albeit with some slight alterations. You marry who you want, not who's picked, but there's still that conflict.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Back to Nora and Andy. That's easy. If there's one thing Queen's got a lot of, it's common parts, or my son works.
I'm going to take my son works. Wish I could do a better James Earl Jones.
I didn't even try to do that. I will
do
never
it.
do justice.
Son works.
My son works.
My son works.
Now try Luke, I am your father.
Akeem, I never told you what happened.
It's time for question 2.
What are the 4 categories of common tasks the royalty of Zamunda are prohibited from doing?
Wiping their own behind after using the bathroom.
Yes, I'm going to put that under the bathing section. Bathing.
Okay.
Okay.
So all categories of personal hygiene are under that, just to clarify.
There were
like
four
there's a-
categories mentioned in the movie. It wasn't explicitly said these are the four categories, but there was a sentence that included four categories.
Well, I feel like one hint is in the name of this question category.
Oh, I guess working.
That was not one of the ones mentioned.
Thank you, Andy. Excellent advice. Wonderful.
Marrying a common woman.
Okay, these are true, but these are not the categories of common tasks. Common tasks. So that's going to be too wrong. I'm going to move it over to KJ and Tom.
Oh, KJ, do you know what it is?
Well, I mean, to me, you can't choose who you're going to marry.
Well, that's not a common task.
Common
apparently.
task.
I would say tying shoes. That
there's a joke about tying shoes.
Oh,
So.
but I don't know if
There's a
that's
joke
one of the
about
things listed. I don't remember him listing anything.
Yeah, I'm surprised by this too, but
Because I usually take note of lists or numbers, and this has got me befuddled.
so when he's eating with his parents,
Mm-hmm.
what does he do that appalls his parents? He comes over and sits by them, but that seems okay. But doesn't he do one other thing that's
Well, he comes over to his parents because he looks sad. So they call him on the phone, right? The intercom.
yeah.
He comes over. They mention, "Oh, you have a mustache now," and she says, "It's been a year." And there's different things. Like, I'm 21. I would like to, tie my shoes. And he goes, "Tie your shoes? I've tied my shoes once. Trust me, that's no great thing." Then he dismisses the rose petal throwers.
Oh, so maybe you can't walk on.
But that's not a common like walking on rose petals or
No, but walking on ground is common.
But he can dismiss the rose petalers. It's fine.
But that was like a big deal.
But it wasn't that big a deal. He's like, "Oh, you don't like." James Earl Jones's character misunderstands. He thinks it's this one thing that annoys him, and so he dismisses the rose petalers.
Okay.
I want to say tying the shoes is a common task, but I don't know if that is a specific task in a category.
Do we want to broaden it up? Dressing himself, similar how bathing was broadened up from.
We could do that, sure.
Want to roll those dice?
Let's roll them.
All right, go for it, Tom.
We're gonna say dressing himself.
Locked in?
Sure.
Locked in.
Dressing was one of the things that they are not able to do.
All right.
So there was a line where he's talking about the lifestyle he lives, and he explains what they can't do, and he says, cooking, pampering, dressing, bathing. Well, I kind of like the bathing. So he's going through what they cannot do. So the 2 points will go to your team. But I wanted to talk about, again, you brought up some other lines there, the idea of living in royalty and how it's presented in this film. Ridiculous, awesome, amazing. Where are we going with this one?
Well, his subjects, like, the kingdom seems pretty well to do, at least the view of the elite strata of society that we see at the wedding and that kind of thing. It doesn't seem like the country is beset by a lot of poverty or anything that they've talked about at all. They also don't show really literally anything that the royal family is responsible for. And I think later in the film he talks about being a goat herder, and he says, well, the goats pretty much take care of themselves, which leaves a lot of time for reading to explain his education. But I feel like he's talking about his actual subjects in this case. So it's James Earl Jones, the same voice in The Lion King as the king talking to a prince, does mention a lot of responsibility for the domain that's like set before him. They have nothing about that in this movie. It's like they're just royalty.
I also have an interesting bit of trivia to go along with that trivia. The queen is actually the same actress as the queen in this movie, in The Lion King. So yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Mind blown, right?
Yeah, I mean they're wealthy the way Arthur from that film is wealthy, right? The idea isn't so much the burden of responsibility that's placed upon him. Other, even though the wedding is a responsibility, the reason why he's given this woman to marry, and he really is given her, is that she will satisfy all his needs, right? It's really still focused on Prince Akeem and on the royal family. It isn't like a marriage to, like when an English prince marries a French princess, right? It's not a marriage to stop a war. It's just to convenience him. And that's how Arthur lives from that film with, was it Dudley Moore? It's
Mhm.
just, he's the idea of the privilege is to be isolating and alienating. And the the human story here is trying to escape alienation. In this case, it's alienation via privilege. In other movies, it might be some other type of thing. But that's why I think responsibility is not given to him, because it's almost too recognizable.
KJ, you might be proud of me on this one because I have a little headcanon on the movie. I was trying to come up with a backstory of how they accrued such amazing wealth. And here's what I have. I think Zamunda is very rich in natural resources. And maybe there's some gold deposits. Maybe it's just other things. But I think that's where they got all their money.
Could be. Maybe we'll find out whenever they release Coming to America.
But
Quite possibly.
Botswana, I think, is all diamonds, right?
So
There
could
you
be.
go.
I'm thinking
yeah,
natural resources, some kind of natural resource.
Botswana has the greatest increase in economic growth of any country, I think, in the last 20 years. It's outpacing China. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's all diamonds.
It sure isn't their crown making skills. Because did anyone else notice that like the crown that the king wears and Akeem wears look like they were like made in a kindergarten classroom?
The same place
yeah.
place where those earrings were made.
Yeah, I hated the decor. It's like Pepto Bismol pink, right? The whole palace.
It's such a
Yes.
classic product of the 80s. I mean,
Yeah.
So 80s.
you're looking at this as, oh, look at that 80s castle.
Pastels.
That's classic.
No, it's like
and
Florida.
the hair too. The potential princess that
Oh yeah.
yeah, that 80s
Like
hair.
the spouting out of the
Yeah, oh god, I know.
Actually, in this movie, the kingdom of Zamunda looks like a much nicer place to live than New York.
Yeah,
New York's
right,
a dirty cesspool. Zamunda looks fantastic.
yeah. We never get outside the palace too far, right?
Right.
That's true story.
Yeah, that's why even when Andy was saying before, I'm like, I don't know if it's all that way or if it is we just didn't see it.
Unaddressed.
There are some like was it Qatar? Like they're actually a very wealthy country because they share the oil profits with the whole country. So I don't know if it's like that where everyone is
Qatar?
wealthy. Qatar, yeah. So I don't know if that's the same case here, but maybe we will find out in the sequel.
Lots of questions to answer.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the only reason we have the sequel is to understand the national economy of Zamunda.
Yeah, to confirm your headcanon.
There you go. It's about time. I mean, KJ, you're always in. I want to get in on the fun with that. So, okay, we have one more question for round one. Back to Nora and Andy, and that's the one. That's easy. If there's one thing Queen's got a lot of, it's common parts.
It's time for question 3.
What brought Prince Akeem and Semi to New York, specifically Queens? There are 3 items on the board.
Well, when they talk about going to America, they have the globe and they say, look at all this space. Where could we possibly go? And he says, New York or LA, which I think is just like kind of throwing a bone to movies are always set there.
I mean, so how many answers are there to this?
There's 3, but I'm waiting to hear what Andy's answer was. We already know that they picked New York.
Well, they basically they pick between the 2 cities, and then he looks and he sees Queens, and they've got to go to Queens to find the Queen.
Okay, I'm going to lead the witness here. How did they pick between the 2 cities?
Oh, coin flip.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Coin flip. I needed the specifics. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Okay.
With the King's head on it.
Yes, I'm going to give that to you because, yeah, they did everything you said was right. But the actual reason they ended up in New York was because of the heads on the coin flip.
Thanks.
So we have two others. What brought them to Queens? What brought them to Queens?
Like, because it's Queens and they're looking for a queen.
That is the correct answer. He's looking for a wife.
Okay.
There is
There's a
one
third one?
more.
Because they say he starts off with going to America. Because first they have to narrow it down to what country? Am I at all close?
Well, this is true. This was part of the process.
And he, I forget why he says that they pick America. Oh, there's a line about, like, I think it's modern woman intellect, something. But I can't think of anything else about their decision to pick. I feel like this whole question revolves around approximately 2 minutes of the movie.
You're not far off, and it may not even be 2 minutes. I'm gonna give a big X on that one, but you still, Andy, you have one more guess to see if you can find the third reason they end up in Queens.
Well, I was going to talk about how they ended up exactly where they ended up in Queens, but I don't think that's the right way to go given the way you're phrasing the question. Yeah, so I'm with Nora here that they have a conversation where they talk about finding the right kind of woman. A woman that's educated. What was the quote that you threw out earlier? That can satisfy his brain and his loins, or something like that.
Intellect.
Yeah.
My intellect and my loins.
And that where to find a woman like that would be in America.
Okay. It's not on the board. I'm going to flip it over to Tom and KJ for the steal.
You know what it is?
No, this is ridiculous. I think Nora and Andy said everything. You think it's the common parts thing in the cab?
No.
Which way do you think Nick's going?
It's what they're doing in that room in Zamunda. Whatever what's the name of the place?
You said it right.
I think I said it right. Okay. So
Yeah.
I only can think of Wakanda. I think what it is they say something about America more broadly. Like, we want to go, this is the place where, like, women are free, I thought.
What about when he's talking to his potential queen? Does he say anything in there?
He just sort of asks her different things she likes, right? What do you like? Will you jump up like an orangutan and then
Bark like a dog.
Yeah, bark like a dog, but it's not. And then she leaves while jumping up like an orangutan. So I don't think it's that. I think it's what happens in that room with the globe, and they spin to America, and he says something about why America. Then
Ooh.
Arsenio, you know it,
Let's game the game. Spinning the globe.
but that's not why he picks America.
Okay.
It isn't why he picked. He isn't like, let's.
But
Spin
is
a
it why
globe.
Nick thinks they picked?
I don't
We
think.
polled one quizzer, and he came up with.
I do feel like KJ is taking this away by basically just knowing Nick.
No, Tom usually wins in that
Yeah.
subjective category for some crazy reason.
But he says something about, like, I don't understand the logic of your point.
I
He
think
picks
KJ's just
America 'cause
frustrated.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But I would say he says something about America. Like, America is it's actually like a kind of pro-America statement.
Okay. All right.
It's something like America is the land of the free, or something like that. Like, in America, women are women are in America, women are free. Like that.
So
We're
gonna go with a pro-America. That's our answer. We're locking in with.
I got nothing else. We did the coin flip. We did Queens because Queen.
Yeah, and globe because it's spin. All right, let's go.
Globe.
We're gonna
We're gonna
lock
go to
in
America because a globe spins.
Yeah, no, we're not. Wait. All right. So our official answer, is they said something about pro-America
and about, like, freedom with women.
Women with freedom, I think, is where you're going.
Yeah. That it's America's this great country where people are free.
Let's lump it all into globe
Locked
spinny
in.
pro-America freedom with women, and the points go to Nora and Andy. I will tell you what the third one was, and I actually think it is important. It's not just in Nick's head. In that critical sequence, and Nora, you weren't too far off. All of this information was disclosed in a pretty short window. He says America, everything Tom was saying, but that's not why they specifically ended up in New York versus LA. You had it correct with the coin flip. It was heads. But before that, and I think this is a critical point to the whole movie, like the whole movie, let fate decide. Fate. Fate is how they ended up in Queens.
Wait,
And
how did I
like
don't
a
get
coin
it.
flip and let fate decide.
Isn't
Are
fate the coin
same
flip?
thing. I
you know what? There were
I
3
concur.
answers on the board. And Nora, you
One
got the
quizzer was
points.
I know I shouldn't argue with it. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's 3 again, just like in any feud variant, not all the answers are the best answer. They are just an answer. So letting fate decide was something that he said. And if you look at this movie, whether we like it or not, I would pose that they were saying that all of this was fate, that these series of events were going to happen. He was going to find his queen and be happy and live happily ever after. Of course, what's great about this show is I bring this to everyone to see if they agree or would like to refute and provide evidence to either. Was this fate?
Well, that's sort of how romantic comedies work, and how, even if you go back to Shakespeare, the conflict in Shakespearean comedies is that it just sort of evaporates. You get to Act 5, and it's like, well, the evil duke who kicked out the people we like, he met a hermit, and that hermit told him that what he was doing was bad, so now he's going to let everybody in, and you guys can get married. It's just the conflict evaporates, and so it gives a sense of inevitability for the couple. And if you don't have this sense that this couple is inevitably bound together, then the romantic comedy is sort of walking on stilts. It's not going to work. And so, successful romantic comedies do have this kind of sense of fate and a sense that the conflict itself is just paper thin. It's a paper tiger.
That sequence that happened in this movie that I think directly exemplifies what you're saying there is at the end when King, what is it? I want to get his name.
Joffrey.
Joffrey. Jaffa. So when King Jaffa is sitting with the queen in the limo in New York, and she's saying, why can't he go after him? And the king is saying, it's tradition. And she's saying, aren't you the king? So there's that quick moment where what was forbidden all of a sudden is not forbidden. Although, KJ, you thought he failed until the bitter end, until that veil lifted up. So where do you chime in on this?
He failed himself, right? His principles. But if we follow this romantic comedy right before the coin toss thing, it's fate. She showed up there, right? Like that was also kind of surprising that she showed up. I was.
Were you
kinda taken
surprised?
aback.
Were you?
Not in so much of an 80s romantic comedy, but
She's just gonna marry this woman from the original sequence. That was a really big build-up.
She's still jumping like
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been a terrible ending, but it would have been something to talk about.
We would have been talking about it all. Actually, we
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have selected this movie if that was the ending.
I have a concern in my headcanon. That woman is still jumping on one leg, and she perished that way. She starved to death because she had to keep doing what the prince told her to do.
Doesn't she end up with Sami? At the end, don't you see like Sami kind of moving in on her?
That's
No,
a different
that's
lady.
thought that was
that's
the-
a bather.
Oh, it's a bather. Okay.
No,
I
she's
thought
not the
it was
bather.
The mom's person.
Yeah,
You know, those,
she's
like-
Oh, like in
Yeah,
a,
she actually has no speaking role in the movie. She is just
her job is to like wear crazy big headbands
Yes.
and like
it's official.
big
It's in the resume.
puffy sleeve things. That's her job.
Exposed
the-
midriff, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
in the realm of fate and kind of serendipity, the whole meet cute is caused by the barber. Like they're going to all these bars and they find all these women that are very incompatible, including Arsenio Hall is a woman who's fantastic. I love that part. But then they go back and the barber's there and they say, no, we can't find any good women. He says, you're looking in the wrong place. You got to go to a nice place like church, or this rally, and he sends them to the rally.
And that is quite the rally. I was gonna say, holier than now.
The children are our future.
A little bit to call it fate, though. Like, they go a bunch of places. They're like specifically looking for a woman for him to marry. Go to many places and find the wrong person, and then eventually keep looking and looking until he finds someone. Like, that doesn't feel like fate. Like, fate would be like if he wasn't really looking and he like ran into her on the sidewalk or like happened to go to the restaurant or something. Like, he's literally like on a hunt, and then eventually on the hunt finds the thing he was looking for. It's not like, look at this, I found this thing I was looking for whilst looking for it very hard.
Well, Tom, I think that's some of your challenges with this movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at, my model for like romantic comedy is It Happened One Night, where it's you have opposites who are thrown into a conflict. They don't particularly like each other, and over time they learn to forgive each other's faults and actually discover they have a passion for one another. And I think you're, right, Nora, absolutely, that, this guy is looking for exactly this. He's spending oodles of money doing it, and he succeeds in doing it.
Ta-da!
But yeah, this is not.
The old rich guy gets exactly what he wants in the
Yeah.
end.
By spending lots of money and time that he has.
Right. Oh, he consulted a local social expert on where to
Yeah.
go. Oh, surprise. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
but I think even if we don't use the word fate, what you need is when you see this woman who he's courting, whose name is, what is it again?
Lisa
Lisa.
McDowell.
Lisa. Okay. When you see Lisa and you see them together and you hear Lisa speak, Lisa is distinct from every other woman in this movie, and her sister acts as a foil to further accentuate the fact that she's different from every other woman in this movie. There's a sense that these people have to be together. They're just the two most charismatic members of their respective sex, and so there's sort of, it's inevitable they have to be together. I wouldn't call it fate in the grander scheme of things, considering he is on this mission. But
And I guess we'll find out in the sequel. Do we think they're gonna do well together?
We don't even know what the sequel's about, so
Well, and then forget
I
the sequel
no
then. Do we think
spoilers. I
they're a good
haven't been
couple.
I have been looking to see either. Yeah.
No, neither have I. But do we think they work well as a couple? Were we rooting for them? Did we want Akeem and Lisa to get together?
I felt like their courtship was admirable. I mean, in the brief courtship that they had, they're both really giving people and working, generous, working towards bettering the people that don't have the privileges that they have, because she's really privileged too. She's like royalty of Queens, New York, in a way.
So we think she's running Zamunda now, like really well, and then misses Queens and wants to go back. Like, I'm just trying to imagine what the actual.
No.
What did it look like the next few years after the wedding?
KJ, I think you can get all these answers on December 18th.
Oh, we are hardcore plugging this sequel.
We're not even getting kickbacks.
Click on our affiliate link. And
Well, I think this was an interesting round one. The points as it stands are 7 points to the co-host team and 2 points for the guest team. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Talking Pictures Trivia Theater presents a screaming lapel pin production, The Jane of My Youth, a coming-of-age story of young love, read by me, Tom. Chapter 6, The Regurgitating Phoenix. Michael felt himself being dragged downward by the collar of his shirt. He tried to struggle, but Riley's grip was iron. His feet slapped the stairs of the stone theater. He leaned his head back to see Jane. She had removed the welder's mask and was now staring down at him, her eyes blank and black. The man with the white hair also had removed his welder's mask and watched as Riley pulled Michael into the center of the room. "Dr. Marbosa, what shall I do with him?" The white-haired man replied, "I don't know yet. The project is almost complete. We just need to acquire the final product. Once we have that, his peeping won't amount to a hill of beans, for then the passageway will be open. Have you acquired the final product?" "Not yet. No, sir," Riley replied. On the table the machine began to glow. A sound emanated out from it, and Michael could feel the room shake.
Jane, turn it off. It's not yet ready.
Jane, without blinking, went to the back of the room and yanked downward on a giant switch. The room stilled. The noise stopped. The sound died.
Good, my pet,
Mabusa said.
Now, help fasten our young guest's arm to the chair. I think he may serve as a witness to the beginning of the end.
She went towards a number of tools that had been left to the side of the giant switchboard. As Riley held him down, she tied one of his arms to the chair and handed Riley the other rope. As Riley worked, Michael's new gift fell from his pocket and spilled out onto the floor. Jane leaned down, very slowly, and with the tips of her red nails grasped and raised the item. "Dr. Mabusa!" He turned, alarmed at the sound in her voice. He looked down and saw what she saw, and his face blanched.
Is that?
"I think it is." He shot forward with possessed, angular movements. He took the object in his hand.
It is it, the final product. Screaming lapel pins, regurgitating phoenix.
Without a word, Jane went back to the lever and pulled. The machine glowed, and Dr. Mabusa approached and placed the pin on top of the box. A horrible scream echoed through the room as the phoenix head began to yell. Above them, in the middle of the air, a small rip appeared, hovering in the center of the world, and began to take the form of a circle. At the circle's lip, Michael could make out what appeared to be small white hands curling their fingers over the reality of the medical theater. This has been a Talking Pictures Theater presentation of a Screaming Lapel Pin production, The Jane of My Youth, a coming-of-age story of young love. This week, Screaming Lapel Pin has on sale the Bibbling Aye. Pick one up wherever Screaming Lapel Pins are sold.
And we're back for round two. This time, KJ and Tom get to lead with the questions. And the categories are: there's a very fine line between love and nausea. I tied my own shoes once. It is an overrated experience. And we seek meager accommodations.
Well, we're going to do them all, right? So we seek meager accommodations.
It's time for question 4.
Semi takes it upon himself to fix up apartment 5D, even though Akeem is supposed to be a poor man. What are the updates and renovations Semi made?
So let's do the what do you call it? A whirlpool? A jacuzzi, right? That's the term. Right? We're gonna lock in jacuzzi. We'll lock
Tom,
in jacuzzi. Yeah.
So hot tub, jacuzzi, whatever. That
whatever
is
it's called.
definitely one of it. Oh, I should have said there are 5 potential answers on the board.
The TV, the big screen TV, I'll even call it.
That will go under new electronics / stereo. Yes.
How specific do we have to be with the furniture?
I don't know what to tell
I
you.
don't know. Because I wanted to say just new furnishings.
I would
but-
say you'd have to be more specific.
Okay. Oh, what do they get that's new? Do they get a new chair? KJ, come. You're not responding at all. I'm talking to.
Nora and Andy didn't take a time to.
No, technically you
like,
should pop
yeah.
like one at a time. So that like Tom did the hop cage.
So it's on me.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's on you.
Do you have another one, KJ?
I do.
You do.
But
No,
Tom,
I know, but
okay.
I'm negotiating.
Oh, you want to risk it? You want to risk it? Yeah.
You do have another one.
I do.
You have 2
Okay,
guesses that you
I'm
have.
going to say the Empire State Building statue.
Glowing
that?
statue of the Empire State Building is on the list.
I love how
didn't have
new
that.
electronics is like an entire category,
Yeah.
but glowing Empire State Building is its own answer.
It stood
Like you're
out.
an interesting bird.
It stood out.
Which makes me nervous about mine. I was gonna just go with lighting in general, all the neon lights.
Yes, and I actually put laser/neon lights. There was some funky lighting going on there. We still have one more potential, and you guys have 2 guesses at this still.
Okay. KJ, do you know what it is?
I have a guess.
It's got to be a furnishing thing, right? It's a piece of furniture. Is it a chair? We don't see the bed.
It's Tom's turn, right? Yeah.
Yeah. We can still talk it out, right?
Not really in this round. Only the
Oh, no.
When you're stealing.
the stealings can talk about it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna go with cozy chair, lazy boy chair, kind of thing. Cozy chair.
One wrong. KJ, what do you got?
Yeah.
Oh man, I got 2 in my head. So the 2 in my head, Tom, are either the painted walls. I feel
Don't
like it
forget,
felt
they
much
get a guess
fresher.
too if they.
Yeah, well,
That's why you
this
don't want to
is,
talk about it.
Well, right, but we do. Or the carpet, right? The flooring also got an upgrade. Now, Nick was a painter back in the day, so he would have noticed the painting. But I'm gonna go with the updated floor and be so bold as to say there was a carpet down there.
I don't think there was.
What are you locking in?
Locking in the flooring.
New paint/floors. There was no carpet, so I'm glad you didn't lock that in. Woo!
New
Yes.
paint /
Yeah,
floors.
all right.
Yes. Like the whole
Paint is on walls.
there was the whole decor. The
Yeah,
paint
no,
and
no,
the flooring.
One Empire State Building, and then the walls on the floor are all
Oh,
one big- yeah.
Nick, you're killing me.
Well, technically they're killing you because they just got 5 points.
By the way, there was a lot of Zamundan artwork.
Oh, and a framed
you did
employee
get
of
to
the
see a
month
bed.
picture.
And a flame, and they did see the bed because Semi and the sister were on the bed, and it was a sweet 80s waterbed.
These are all valid. These are all
Sweet
valid, but
80s
in the
waterbed.
scene where we go in and they just show the apartment, those are all the things
Yeah.
you see.
Maybe we should have pulled more than the quizzer to get.
I brought this one up not just for this sequence, but a little bit of to talk about how they actually could live and how they are living. Semi's approach versus Akeem's approach. Just anything to do with how they're showing the difference between how the rich live and those who are poor.
Well, I like the character of the super for the building. He's an interesting one. He obviously doesn't care too much for taking care of his residents' situations. And it's a really cool hot tub. I mean, I want to say that exposed piping hot tub. I've never seen such a thing.
It seems like a hazard. I don't know how else to put it.
But I like when they
Probably.
needed more poor accommodations that he's like, well, I'll switch with my place. They're like, well,
You can have my place. It's a real swindle.
The other thing that the movie did is they showed us a few other examples of different classes. So of course you had the Zamunda Palace, but you also had Mr. McDowell's house. So that was
Middle
another
class.
spot. Yeah, well,
Upper middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't know how far outside of New York was he, right? Like that's we have any
Definitely seemed
idea what
like a
was his
suburban
commute?
home of some type, perhaps.
Right?
I know
But,
where he
like-
lived, but it might come up in future conversations. So I
Oh, really?
Yeah.
His address is in there because he tells the king where to come and get Akeem.
Ooh, that is true. So it was interesting the way they showed the different classes, and then of course one of the things they did is Mr. McDowell is fairly uppity and kind of insults people who he thinks are beneath him. And then when the king shows up, he gets really mad when the king kind of dismisses him. So I don't know how well they did that, but they did do that.
I found that character to be a little annoying, though he kind of redeems himself by refusing the money for the inconvenience that he suffered at the end. In terms of class stuff, there's this idea of a nobility and poverty type thing that's going on here, that if you can, live like a normie, so to speak, then you can gain some sort of knowledge of your essentials. Like if you could strip yourself of the accoutrements of the world, then you can find your kind of essential personhood, or something like that. I think, again, I mean, we've brought this point up a number of times, that sort of rings hollow here, because he doesn't really learn anything. He just finds what he wants. And he's also not particularly stripped of his poverty, right? It's a performance of poverty, or a performance of struggle. So instead, what it seems more like is a sort of frog prince story. Kiss the frog and it becomes a prince, as opposed to as opposed to kind of having to be forced to go into the wilderness and survive. He already has the characteristics he needs to survive. He actually outshines everyone else. So I think that seems to be more the genre, the way this movie works.
I also find this interesting how they do reference hierarchy and class structure, not only in Zamunda, but in the US. So Cleo McDowell is effectively the king of his own castle. In fact, his home almost is castle-like for suburbia. And then the other part of it is Daryl and Daryl's family. They're the ones who have a successful business, and Daryl's kind of the one who just got lucky and born into the right family. Just how Akeem got lucky and born into the right family. However, they handle it completely different. So I actually enjoyed those elements of this movie, and how there was almost different, class structures even within their communities. And the fact of, and Tom, you mentioned this point where the king tries to buy off Cleo and he has none of it. Even there, in a very rude comment, he's pretty much says, your daughter is beneath my son. Even there, I thought that was an interesting dynamic of who is acceptable.
Yeah, he is very much invested in this kind of upward mobility attitude. I mean, he's very much the kind of this like Tocquevillian American, right? And this movie is invested in that idea of America as this center of up and comers, and he sort of embodies that. And we even see with the minor characters, like Louis Anderson's character also describes himself in terms of
years.
Yeah, a few more years. And it's both silly, but it reflects what people in this world are attempting to do. And we dislike Daryl, the boyfriend of our female lead, at the beginning of the film, because he's born into privilege, but he hasn't earned it, and he doesn't manage it. And so that main character, the main the father of our main female character, he sort of stands in for what this country does differently from other countries, right? Which is kind of sponsor class mobility, which is why it's him meeting a prince is sort of absurd, because the social system from which they're coming doesn't permit any kind of class mobility.
That just made me think of the part when he says, when I say he's got his own money, he's got his own money in his face.
Yeah, he's running the Fed.
No, I was just going to say that I do think that it's interesting. There's a part where the dad talks about how the reason why he wants her to be with somebody rich is because he doesn't want her to struggle, which I feel like is also like he's kind of like a dislikable character, but there are a couple moments where and that's one of them where I feel he actually seems like a real dad. Like where it's not coming from I'm just, social climbing. It's just I was poor and I don't want that for you, kind of vibe to it. And then also obviously when the minute the king starts saying bad things about his daughter, and then he's like, you're dead to me kind of thing. It's otherwise he's not really there are a couple other moments where he's pushing Daryl on her, and he's like, he's rich and he's good to you. He's not good to her. He's a total dick. And I'm like, if you really cared about your daughter, you wouldn't want her to be with this guy. But then these other moments of at least he has some oh, you are actually a parent.
Daryl has no positive character traits displayed in this movie. He is the sole glow prince.
Yeah. The only good part about Daryl is the moment when he's about to make out with her sister and he breaks the fourth wall. It's the
Yes.
best. When he like gives that look at the camera, like,
Yeah,
it's my only positive Daryl moment.
yeah, I would say that like I think upward striving is not looked down upon, right? And I think what he is, well, we don't like the father. The scenes. I mean, my problem with the father was I think the acting was kind of hammy, but in terms of the actual character,
Do you think that was by design? I'm sorry to interrupt you. There,
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's trying to overplay it, but he's not. You know what I mean? When you see like Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall do kind of over the top performances, it's very enjoyable. With him, it was kind of like there was a lot.
It's like tiresome.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. It was very tiresome. But I think with him, you know, like you said, Nora, he just wants a better life for his daughter. He wants a better life for the people around him and for himself. And while that might make him a little bit of a handshaker and a backslapper, when he refuses money because it won't benefit his daughter, we realize that you know, his upward striving, his upward mobility is it's a good thing. It's not something that the movie has kind of condescension towards.
Well, it shows that he has some limits to his essentially like dad level of gold digging. Before that, it was really I think he's the most distasteful character, actually more than Eric LaSalle. Eric LaSalle is just clueless. You know, he's born into the Soul Glow fortune, and what is, you know, he doesn't really know any better. He's not exactly maybe a great person, but he doesn't seem really evil. But the naked kind of gold digging of the dad, I found to be quite a negative thing. But then, later it shows that he does have limits. There is some ethical background where he says, basically, there's pride maybe, which could be a bad thing too, but self-respect and respect for his daughters. I mean, he's the single dad, right? The mom is gone, and so he's leading his daughters through the world, and at least they're worth more than money in the end.
Yeah, I would say the dad might be the only person with an actual character arc. I think everybody else is like starts and ends in like the exact same spot.
Yeah, there is growth.
Like,
there is growth.
Like,
Tricky.
he's like the only person that you end up liking or disliking. He's the only change.
I think you have a very good point there.
Mm-hmm.
There is some character development. Okay.
Minimal.
Minimal is the key. But that's all we're asking for here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to the next question. It is either there is a very fine line between love and nausea, and I tied my own shoes once. It is an overrated experience.
What do you think, KJ?
Yeah, go for it, Tom. I think I know what you'll pick.
I think love and nausea.
Okay.
Rachel wouldn't let me pick that one.
No, I feel like there's a Vomit Guy reference in there somewhere, Andy, by the way.
It's time for question 5.
The queen-to-be, Princess Imani Izzy, was raised to do whatever Prince Akeem tells her to do. What are the 4 requests Akeem asks her to perform?
Yeah, I'd say bark like a dog.
Bark like a dog. KJ.
Hop on one leg.
Hop on one leg.
Act like an orangutan.
Orangutan. Back to you, KJ.
Oh man, what's the last one? Neil?
No.
One wrong. Tom.
Oh, tell him everything that she likes.
That is not what we're going for here. There are
Yeah.
4 specific requests. I feel like we might have a steal here, but
Oh, they know what it is. Whatever.
Nora and Andy.
Free it
Maybe.
is.
Well, I think I know what
Well, we can discuss
what
it,
thing
right?
is, but I don't know if it was Nick thinks it is.
That's true.
This one is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
He says bark like a dog, and then she starts going arf arf, but then he says like a big dog, and he changes it. So bark like a big dog, I think, is another one.
Mhm.
But
You're
then
locked
I
into
don't.
my psyche. You're locked in.
I'm locked in. Okay,
No,
dear
no.
God, it was time.
Yeah. No. This one was
Wait,
pretty
wait,
darn
wait.
straightforward. Yeah.
So
Wait.
that could be that, but the other thing that he says is he orders her to disagree with him. which she refuses to do.
Well, which one would you like to lock in?
I think we should go with the one that he said I was locked in into safety.
All right, you pick.
Bark like a big dog.
I thought that was the lock-in, so that is correct.
Nice.
That one is super straightforward. There's literally 4 requests when he's like, so you're going to have to do whatever I tell you to do. And those were the 4 requests. Yes, it went from arf, arf to woof, woof. So you will receive the 4 points for that one. So is there a very fine line between love and nausea? This was a quote that the Queen said when she was referring to how she was arranged with the king.
Right, and they came to love each other. And
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I have a big issue with whose job was it to? She's almost like a concubine in a way. Like, whose job was it to create her training program? Because they did a terrible job. Like, if you knew Prince Akeem at all, you should like go on a meta level and know that what he wants is someone that does have a personality. Whatever you like. Like, that's not what he wants.
Whatever you
like. Were they not paying attention? This is not a person that's made for him. This is a person that's made for like a figurehead of him, you know?
I think this was a person who was made for every one of the blank slate kings that came before, and they just followed that same, dare I say, recipe of this is how. I mean, even in the United States, they had finishing schools, and this is how it was to be a lady. They probably had the same thing. This is what it is to be a queen.
But the queen seems much more intelligent than that, and she's not afraid to disagree with her husband. Maybe that evolved over time. But Tom, when you're talking before about Lisa being different than every other female character, that the character that's the closest to Lisa, I think, is the actual queen in terms of having agency and having her own will. And
they're also both able to counter the patriarch.
Right.
They're both able to stand up to the patriarch by they have the position to. They're both in positions of power vis-a-vis the patriarch. And they're also both able to make changes to the patriarch's plan for continuation. In the case of McDowell, it's marry his daughter to Darryl so that she could have even more money. Right? He's so worried she's going to struggle. And, with the Queen, and she's able to counter that. Lisa's able to say no. And then the king obviously wants a kind of replication of what he's gone through. And she's able to tell him that you, as the embodiment of the tradition, can stop the tradition. And so you see those two figures, Lisa and the Queen, kind of shine through because they're the ones who can make changes. It's really the men who can't. The men are sort of locked into their systems.
Is there any other part in the movie where love nauseates somebody? Does anybody else struggle with either falling in love?
I can think of one.
I can think of the courting scene in the bars.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking of, going through all those characters.
But was that love? So maybe is that the fine line that she was talking about?
I think the idea, what she's talking, well, he says it, right? There's a fine line between love and nausea.
The Queen says it, actually.
Oh, the Queen says it. Okay.
The Queen says it.
Well, no, the Queen says she was nauseous. And he's the one who says, see, what we learned here is there's a fine line between love and nausea. And she looks at him as if to be like, that's what you got from that comment.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I think the Queen and the King's relationship, like you guys were saying, it grows over time, or you get this idea of, like love is something that can happen over a period of years. But I don't know if is anybody else nauseated by love? I mean, it seems like Prince Akeem is nauseated by Lisa's sister, who attempts to provide him manual stimulation at the St. John's game. That doesn't impress him too much.
Okay, the last category, and there may be a bonus question, but first we must know the question for I tied my own shoes once. It is an overrated experience.
It's time for question 6.
The director, John Landis, is known for his characters occasionally breaking the fourth wall. What are the occurrences of this in the film? There are 4
said so
on
many
the
of them
board,
already.
and I know. So maybe you're in line for the steal.
There's a secret one that nobody mentioned yet.
Well, I have 4 on the board, so we'll see. And I got this from a source. So
Okay, I'm just gonna go with the ones that have already been said. The Prince of the Soul Glow looks back after going through the window of Lisa's sister.
yes, Daryl was with the wet clothes, and Patrice was upset that Lisa broke up with him and told him he has to get off his wet clothes. Yes.
God, I don't remember any of them. I know we discussed them too. I think, is it Arsenio Hall? No, somebody shrugs at the camera out of frustration.
That's all 4, right? We got them.
No, I know. I'm trying to work it out.
There were eyes that looked directly at the camera.
Yeah. Oh God, I think Eddie Murphy does it at one point when somebody says something and he kind of looks at the camera and shrugs.
Are you thinking of Trading Places?
I'm gonna go with God. I'm gonna go with our Arsenio Hall at the end of the movie when he's like with the cupbearer, kind of looks at the camera, smirkingly.
He smirks, but that wasn't a fourth wall break.
It wasn't? Okay.
No. KJ?
I'm gonna risk it all on the Duke brothers. I'm gonna call that a fourth wall break. I mean, it's got to be, because I mean, unless they're in the same universe as Trading Places, but either way, right? It's for the audience. Wall goes down. They didn't necessarily look at us or anything, but the joke was to.
Are you trying to convince me for or against?
This is why I do so well on this show, points wise.
Well, I'm going to assume that's your
Locked
answer.
in.
And no, they did not look at the camera. And theoretically, this movie is posing that it's in the same universe.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, points wise, it would have made more sense for Tom and I just to take 2 X's, because then Nora and Andy could have only gotten 1 point.
Do we have to get the rest to win the points, or do we just have to get one right?
There's a bonus point.
Oh,
The great equalizer. A bonus question is the great equalizer here. So, well, no, but you're
Wait,
also
it's
assuming
it's
they're not
our-
going to get the answer, KJ.
no, he was saying that the question is, if to steal it, do we have to complete the set of 4
No,
or
you just
not?
need to
Let's get one
get one.
to
Yeah, yeah.
steal.
KJ's saying to maximize your points.
Right, because they only get as many points as
minimize.
we listed, right?
Yeah. But you're also making the assumption that they know. So we're going to turn it over to Andy and Nora. What is 1?
I'm totally blanking, and I'm
Oh.
feeling really terrible about it.
Oh, I know
yeah.
one,
Okay, good.
and
Because I'm totally blanking on it.
and I hope Nick knew this one because it's for sure
Wait.
real.
Let's discuss though before Nick starts to tell you that you're right or you're wrong.
Okay, when they're
This
like,
one wasn't Nick just counting. There was a resource that explained
okay,
fourth
perfect.
walls.
because when they're like messing around and all the crazy stuff is happening, the dog definitely breaks the 4th wall.
Are we
Wait,
locked in?
what? No.
It is 100% true, but it's not the most straightforward one.
Do you know a more straightforward one that involves a human?
I know Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall both do it, but I just can't remember exactly when they do it.
That's it. I'm having the same moment that Tom was. It's like I can visualize Eddie Murphy doing it, and yet I like can't think of the exact scene.
Was Eddie Murphy's one having to do with the bathers or the toilet wiping?
I feel like it might have happened during the talk with his dad, but I don't know. We can go with the dog one. I feel like none of these are specific enough to be like we know the exact line that he said. This is gonna burn me because it's like one of my favorite things, but I can't think of the exact thing.
Was it when the dad, when the king was saying that, he was like, I always assumed you had sex with your bathers. I know I do. And then
That was a quality moment.
Actually, another quality moment is when he explains that he remembers just the other day he ordered someone to change his diapers, and now
Yeah.
he's a man.
I ordered your first diaper change.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, what are we locking in?
I know the dog one.
Okay. we'll go with I'm behind you.
The dog broke the fourth wall at McDowell's house when like there's the crazy people going in and out and the king and the Akeem leaves and it's like a mess and everybody's like, what's going on? And then the dog's like,
For the audience at home, Andy just looked at the screen, breaking our fourth wall, I guess, in his best dog-like stare.
It was a very good dog-like
It was
stare.
very good
Thanks.
dog-like stare.
Well, what I will say is that Andy is correct.
yes.
There was, and I had a Patrice / dog because it
Yeah.
actually I think happens in the same sequence where Patrice actually does why does she get all the good ones at the camera, and immediately the dog also stares at the camera after she says that. So that is
Mhm.
one. There was another one where Akeem was when he was asking the bride to bark like a dog. He gives
Yes.
he
It's
gives
in the in the
and
room.
the other one is like I didn't visually remember. I just saw it where Akeem and Semi are talking on the ledge of the apartment, and Semi looks at the camera. That one I didn't visually know as much. I'm sure in the movie I could find it.
When is that?
Right when they first like moved in,
Yeah,
they were out on like the balcony on like the fire
yeah.
escape.
When they're out on the ledge, and he looks at the camera with such meager accommodations.
It's before it's when they went up and their luggage was still outside, and then everybody was like stealing all of it, and then they came back outside to get it, and it was all gone.
Yeah, so it was on like the ledge. So that was the one I didn't actually remember that one as well.
I felt like you know when I talked about like it's a big budget movie, and like they were just going all out. It's like so extra basically. And the dog breaking the fourth wall is basically like the gauntlet throw down, like oh we're having the dog break the fourth wall. You know what I mean? It's like this is how far we're going. This is what we're doing.
I couldn't get the one out of my head from Trading Places when they were like, this is Frozen Custody. And he's like, just
that was the one that I always go back to, and it actually was, oh gosh. A bacon. It was bacon. He goes bacon, as in a bacon and lettuce tomato sandwich, and he just goes up like, really? Yeah, that is a classic one, and that also was John Landis.
Yeah.
The director. So that's why it was kind of his. Even though Eddie Murphy did it, it's kind of something he uses a lot. What did you think about the humor and the style of the actual comedy? I know before we were focusing more on the romance in the comedy, but I always look at this movie as honestly comedy first, and yes, there's a romance in it versus the traditional rom-com. At least that's how I maximize my enjoyment.
I don't know if it's my level of maturity or state of mind or what it was, but I laughed a lot rewatching it again. It's just chock full of all the little touches, you know what I mean? Like comedy is about timing. It's about the quick one-liners thrown in that you might not notice, like, oh, when I ordered them to change your diaper, you know, like you can miss that so fast. And there it's just super dense with nods to here and little touches there. And if you're paying attention, I feel like it builds up to a pretty funny movie.
And they play it straight, right? Every joke, every actor is on board with the joke. James Earl Jones, as you said, I ordered it to change your diaper. Every Eddie Murphy joke, he is so sincere as Akeem. I think that's a big reason why all these jokes work.
Really earnest.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, James Earl Jones is incredibly ridiculous in like the stuff he's saying, and it's his performance is almost manic. It's like it's super over the top, but he's fully invested in it.
So wide.
Yeah, when he says like he's like, I know I do. You know, it's like so intense, but intense
is the word.
They're dedicated, you know, they're like fully on board with the comedy as it was.
The lion on the shoulder, I was saying, I'm like, I feel like any other actor that would look just like completely ridiculous on, and James Earl Jones was like so big and like of course, here is the lion on my shoulder
with the gigantic gold necklace.
Nora, you said it earlier though. There are so many quotable quotes in this movie, and I was also cracking up on the rewatch because it had been quite some time since I saw it, and just as I mentioned in the introduction, I had never seen the real cut. And there are scenes that early on that caught me off guard, even like when he's getting bathed. I mean, they were funny, just funny stuff that I didn't even know was in the movie.
Like so many movies in the 80s, especially really, I guess, John Landis, it's like the random one scene where their breasts in it. Is some sort of requirement to get the juvenile males in the theater or something. I don't know what it is, but it's like part of his ove to like show some nipples, just for a tiny little bit though.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the thing in the 80s, because you only were able to show nudity starting really in the early 70s, so it's a fairly new permission you have.
Jamie Lee Curtis in Trading Places, and Animal House had a scene when John Belushi's up on the ladder, and he's like looking on the crazy sorority like pillow fight or something ridiculous.
I remember when I was watching Trading Places with my wife, and they had the scene with Jamie Lee Curtis, and she's getting into bed with Louis in a friendly way. It's not actually a sexual scene, but I was like, I do not remember this scene because on TV,
right.
It's not there.
It's not there.
Yeah, the movie's pretty open about it. Its characters' sexual behavior. It offers them a lot of sexual license too, which I liked. It's not a particularly prudish film.
They don't moralize it at all, really. It's not.
Which is great. Which is, it's probably be a very different movie if it was made today. But there is no kind of moral aspect to it. It's or moralizing, like you said, aspect to it. It's simply kind of pleasurable, because how else would princes live?
Well, we'll see in December, right?
No. What I was actually going to say, he literally received not only permission, but almost an order from the king to live up his life for the next 40 days, and you're coming back and you're getting married. So it was definitely.
Going to show your royal oats.
Yes. So it was with his blessing, if you will. And yes, KJ, we will see what happens in the future. Again, we're really just watching that for the economic structure of Zamunda, but aside from that, maybe we'll pick up a little bit of that. Now, here we are towards the conclusion of the feud, with the co-hosts having 12 points and the guests having 8 points, but we're not done yet. There is one more bonus question that is open to both teams, and there were 6 questions. This is worth 6 points. And if you get it exactly right, that amount of points will be doubled.
Ooh.
Okay? So keep this to yourself. If you got to talk amongst yourselves via text or something, go for it. But this is what it all comes down to. The category of the bonus question is called the following. In 20 or 30 years, with hard work, maybe you could have a place like this.
It's time for a bonus question.
Where does Cleo McDowell and his family live? Please do not look it up on the internet. Where do they live? If you get the area, you get the 6 points. If you get the exact address, you will get 12 points.
KJ, I just texted you the answer.
You actually text me the answer.
Oh crap! Sorry.
And Nora and Andy.
I did. Oh no!
I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. But I'm not saying it's right
Pat
or
Gavin,
wrong.
I think, might be on that one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not them, but I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. But you guys, I'll pretend I didn't see it.
Yeah, the street name. I mean, he definitely for sure says like the exact address, basically, on the phone. 80s phone beige on the wall.
So location, 6 points. Exact address, like street address, 12 points.
And just for our audience, Pat Gavin recognized the address as from Coming to America. So
can we say it? What's the?
I'm waiting for you both teams to be locked in.
Question, Nick: Do you get disqualified if the accuracy of part of your answer is wrong, but like the general area is right? Is it better to not
put it
go
this
with
way?
the
No.
detailed part?
Guess fully.
Okay.
6 points is specifically to the area location, and then the double is on the street address.
All right, we're locked in then.
What if we have the street address but not the general? Wait, Tom, do you know the general location too?
I think so.
Are both teams locked in?
We are.
Locked in.
Yes, locked in. Mhm.
Okay. Tom, you seem extremely confident about this. So let's hear what your team has to say.
I believe it's 8507 Queens Boulevard.
And where is that?
Well, it's in Queens. I think it is well, it's in Queens. Like Queensville Estates or something like
Okay,
that.
I like that. Yeah, let's.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah.
So,
should we go with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to write this down because, of course, I have to give you both at the same time here. Where'd my pen go? I lost my pen.
You are in front of a computer.
No, I need to write it down. Okay. Tom, repeat it.
I said 8507 Queens Boulevard, and what are we calling it, KJ? The Queensville Estates?
Yeah.
Said Queensville
Yep.
Estates.
I like that.
And team Nora and Andy, what is your answer?
All right, we're going 1205 Jackson Avenue, Jamaica Estates, Queens.
Oh, that's probably it.
I know the last part is.
Jamaica Estates.
And I'm nervous about that address, Tom. Is that the McDowell's restaurant?
I think that's McDowell's.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, is that?
So the points go to the guest team of Nora and Andy. They will be getting 6 points. The correct address was 2432 Derby Avenue,
Derby.
Estates. I believe, and I didn't fact check it, but I believe you were referring to the address of the McDowell's restaurant.
Oh, probably.
They say that a lot
It's on
more times
Queens Boulevard.
at the
Yeah.
Black
Yeah,
Awareness
yes.
Rally.
Because that's like on the main drag, which makes
And
sense.
then
Yeah.
when they're
Yeah.
telling his dad where to find them, like that one is
Mhm.
much more repeated.
Yes. So in the last second here, in the bonus finale question, the guest team has taken this down. It is 16-12. A valiant effort by all participants.
Sorry, KJ.
Very tight race.
No problem.
Well, KJ knew it was Jamaica Estates, right?
By the beach, boy.
Congratulations again to the guest team, and we'll be right back after this quick commercial break to see if there's anything else we want to discuss about this one.
It's time for Guess That Song, Whistling Edition. I'll whistle a song, and you guess what it is. Here we go. If you guessed all the small things by Blink 182, you're right.
And we're back.
It's time for Movie Rant.
I mean, I think the direction is kind of sloppy in a number of it's a number of times where it's kind of clear that he's just sort of coasting. Like one example of this is in the scene when he goes after Lisa, he being Eddie Murphy's Prince Keaton, goes after Lisa, and he jumps over the subway token rail and kind of chases her down. In that scene, the camera lingers on that subway, the subway entrance, also with two cops in the background, and yet the gun is never fired. We never learn, that doesn't become a conflict. The fact that he had to jump the rail. And it's okay if
Yeah, I thought it was a weird touch because you think he would have gotten in trouble. Like, why?
Yeah, it's like that. There's another one where he tells these two little girls sitting on his porch that he's going to go see Lisa, which has much more of like a Nutty Professor Eddie Murphy comedy spirit to it, as opposed to this, which that just seems like a moment from a different world. And there's a number of moments like that where the direction just seems either sloppy or he's coasting. It's hard to say what, but it's not like a neatly made movie.
I may be able to give you a little background clarity on this. So when this film was being made, Eddie Murphy pretty much demanded John Landis to be the director. The studio didn't want him. In fact, he actually had some issues. I forget what it was. One of his movies.
He had 3 flops in a row, and I think like he made Twilight Zone the movie, or was one of the.
No, and that's what it was. During making Twilight Zone the movie, I think 3 people were killed during production.
Yeah.
So he had some lawsuits, and he was not necessarily in a great place.
Plane crash in that film that killed a pretty big star whose name I don't remember, and I think 2 children also.
2 children. Yeah. So he had like a few flops. He had some personal strife with the lawsuits, and they actually, even though Eddie Murphy like pretty much demanded John Landis because he just enjoyed working with him in the past, they even got into some like serious scuffles, like physical scuffles during the filming of this film. And I think John Landis was pretty much saying that he didn't want it, nor did he particularly like this movie. And he actually wanted, when I forget if it was DVD or Blu-ray or whatever is like came out, he wanted to do like a director's cut, and they said, no, it's too popular for you to change anything. So I think there might have been some, strife behind the camera, which may bring some of those things to light.
I feel like the scene with the little girls at least made a little bit of sense, because I feel like there's this ongoing theme of like him being like crazy in that neighborhood, which I feel like living in the city, like the reaction to him like singing on the way home, or like just randomly talking to people and them kind of looking at him like, it did seem somewhat accurate. But I did have this vision of like when they were filming that scene of him like talking to the little girls, of like that must have just been him doing that to a camera, which must have been pretty odd. Like I had this vision of what that must have been like to watch him film, like right up in the face of it. But yeah, it seemed odd.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something in this world, but it seems like a little something geared towards a younger audience. And this movie seems to be made for an older audience, but occasionally it's hard to tell. The movie kind of slips out of that, because the humor generally is pretty mature.
Yeah.
I didn't think the scene with the little girls was out of place. That never caught me. I mean, it's kind of like a one-off, but he does a lot of showing kind of the characters in the neighborhood. That how close-knit the neighbors are, how everybody knows each other. Like Nora said, when he's singing on the way home and everybody's screaming at him to shut up. I found that to be extremely accurate. We, living in Philadelphia, that is what the street would do at that point in night. But 2 random girls chilling on the stoop in their winter jackets, kind of going, this guy's crazy. I mean, it's all just kind of like the random little caricatures, I thought.
Yeah, it seemed like something out of a different. There's moments like this. It seems either out of a different film or it just feels kind of, I don't know, kind of lazy at times. So I'm not, I can't imagine what their conflicts were over. I mean, what would they be arguing over?
I think some of it was actually personal. I think some of the things I was reading was saying he had a grudge because he didn't Eddie Murphy didn't support him at his lawsuits. Like there was more to it than just
it's one of those
the
things.
film.
Yeah.
There was more to, and then also paying this the crew and the staff, like stuff like that. Just not necessarily production, but yeah. I don't think we can conclude a conversation about this movie without talking about the various roles certain actors played. I think you brought this up, Andy, like you've been waiting to talk about this. You want to take point on this one?
Sure. I mean, well, as a separate comment, real briefly, I always wonder about movies where at the end they do the roll call and they one by one show the characters with the actor names. Most movies don't do it, but some movies do, and I wonder like why they're going for that. It's like a little extra nod to all the different actors or something. But I liked how they went through most of the characters that they played and labeled who was in it or who did it. And Eddie Murphy doing the old Jewish guy in the barbershop is fantastic. I mean, a lot of the other roles you could tell who it was, and that's great. And it was really entertaining. But that guy, you would really not know.
They actually, I was reading something about this, and they were saying that he wanted to test how realistic it looked. So he went around the studio saying in Eddie Murphy voice with that makeup on, "I'm Eddie Murphy," and people did not believe he was Eddie Murphy.
This is the best joke in the place about the spoon. that actually made me laugh out loud.
That's the end. That's the end, right?
Yeah. But I do like the argument about boxing as well, with him kind of defending Rocky Marciano. Yeah. Oh, Joe Louis did lose to Rocky Marciano. Joe Louis was 137 years old. He always lied. Frank Sinatra came in here. I talked to Frank Sinatra and I asked him, how old is Joe Louis? And he said, Joe Louis, 137 years old. I thought that was great. That was my favorite point.
Did you all know that this movie was Cuba Gooding Jr.'s first film appearance?
I didn't know it was his first, but yeah.
I didn't know it was his first, yeah.
By the way, when the barber is cutting Cuba Gooding Jr.'s hair, his scissors are like 4 inches above his hair, and he's just talking and cutting, and it's just ridiculous.
There was actually a cut scene where Cuba Gooding Jr. says he doesn't have enough money, and then Clarence like shaves a bald patch out of the back of his head, but it got cut. It got cut from the film.
Yeah, but the barber chair scene was a lot of fun. You wish you'd had more of that maybe in the film.
This is the first film where Eddie Murphy really started that trend of playing different characters in his movies, which we all know continued to like Nutty Professor and all of those days.
It's part of what you did. I mean, these are SNL people, right? And that's what you do as an SNL person. And so you have to rotate in these different character types and jump into those different bodies.
It took commitment though, because I mean, they'd be taking a few hours to get makeup and all that just to play those different roles.
It's interesting. Like, I feel like Eddie Murphy, each of the characters, not only it's like the voice is different, but like the posture and that like he like very much like physically embodies like a different person with each one. Like it's in addition to just like I mean he's at the top of his game like comedy wise, and I do wonder how much of that barbershop scene was actually like written down, or did he just like make that up? But like it's just like he's actually a really good actor. Like, I mean, comedian, yes, but like he takes on those personas and like you believe that he is whatever he's pretending to be.
You sort of wish that his career had. I haven't seen what is his most recent movie on Netflix? I haven't seen that.
Dolomite.
Yeah, I haven't seen that film, but
Dolomite is my name.
Yeah. like Dreamgirls, he's fantastic, and it's a real performance
Yeah.
in Dreamgirls. It's not
Yeah.
a kind of broad comic thing, and you'd wish that his transition from these type of roles to something to more roles like that. The way kind of Robin Williams did it, though I think Eddie Murphy's a lot more talented. You wish that had happened, and it's kind of there seems to be a lot of lost opportunity with what happened in the 21st century with his career.
I think I watched a video about it, talking about how he just had kids and he wanted to, because he was his stand up was pretty raunchy, and a lot of drug stuff, a lot of sex stuff, and he wanted to like keep it clean for his kids. But honestly, I think it got really boring. I mean, the Nutty Professor was like kind of a signal for that, because all of these characters are really interesting, right? Like Nora said, they're really varied. There's a lot of dynamic range kind of that he shows when he plays all these people. And then in the Nutty Professor, it's like fart jokes, the whole time. It's like it's so boring, and so it's a little bit sad, but.
Oh, he may have been trying to do something for his kids, as you said, like in that period of time. Yeah.
There's a really interesting Meetings in Cars, Getting Coffee. I don't know if you guys have binge watched that on Netflix. It happened to come out when I was on maternity leave, and there was a lot of video watching. But he's on an episode of that with Jerry Seinfeld, and it's an interesting conversation about, like, I think part of it also is that his comedic skills are very rooted in stand-up. And I think he just stopped doing stand-up. And I think that there's like a sharpness that comes from that they were talking about, like that is like the honing of the skills, like that, like nothing keeps you sharp like that. And that he was like talking about getting into it, getting back into it, because that's really how you, like, if you want to go back and you want to really be funny, no matter what you're trying to do, like go do stand-up for a bit, and like that'll get you like back in fighting shape kind of thing.
And that was his roots.
Exactly. So like maybe like that's also part of like the evolution of his career, of like kind of getting like out of shape almost.
Yeah, I think there's that, and I think what you were talking about, Andy, too, was that what's so nice about this movie, and you mentioned this, Andy, was the lack of moralizing. There's sort of the movie is for adults. It's relaxed in that way about those kind of themes, in a way that his kind of raunchy stand-up would be suited for. And so, he seems to just so relaxed within that environment. And as you start to think of, well, what is this doing or saying for children? And you have to kind of contain your talent in that way, or direct it towards some sort of, direct it. It seems like it might reduce what he's capable of doing. But really what I was looking for with him, and what you see in Dreamgirls, is a person who's really playing something that isn't, that isn't rooted in the kind of a comic style performance. That's, really rooted in kind of a tragic self-destruction, which is what, he plays in that role. He plays this kind of pop singer who goes down the drain. And it's a lovely little performance, and you thought you'd get just a ton of a lot of opportunity for Eddie Murphy after that people would want to write these kind of complex characters for him, for a person who's now in middle age, who isn't going to be kind of doing this kind of aggressive raunchy comedy. But he never bit, and I don't, or maybe the roles weren't there, but I really don't know why.
Well, today was quite the Trivial Feud, and I'd like to congratulate once again our esteemed guest team of Nora and Andy, who took down right at the last second this week's challenge. So again, congratulations. And honestly, it was a pleasure having you both on today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. It was very fun.
All right. KJ, our worldly editor, I'd like to thank him for masterfully crafting these episodes. Also like to acknowledge IMDb, which is a great resource for movie information. Check out our website, talkingpicturestrivia.com, for more information about us and our episodes. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and Stitcher, as well as our YouTube channel. We are extremely grateful for any positive reviews, as those help others like you find us. If you like what you hear, remember to like and subscribe to our show. Join us next time when we discuss KJ's recommendation from Japan in 2007, Maiko Han. I don't know what KJ's getting us into this time. Should be fun. Bye. Ding, 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 ding.